So let me introduce our next speaker for session 2. The speaker for session 2 is Craig Hill, advisor, Australian Sports Technologies Network. Craig will be talking about future of sports industry from advanced manufacturing initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and a great pleasure being here from Australia. I really appreciate the organisers of this event bringing me to present on Australia's experience in developing a sports technology industry. Very brief background on myself. Although I'm identified as an advisor to the Australian Sports Technologies Network, I was actually the founding CEO of the Australian Sports Technologies Network back in 2011. So we've been in this sports technology game for about 5.5 years, and we believe we're probably first or second industry body in the world to focus on sports technologies. So it's great to be here. My role now, I'm now involved in special projects with the Australian Sports Technologies Network. That includes trade and international initiatives, as well as running a sports technology accelerator for startup companies. I'm also doing private consulting with a number of high potential companies as well. A couple of days ago I thought, well, how does Australia compare to South Korea in sport? Is Australia very good compared to South Korea, or are we bad? And it was quite interesting to see how we compare as both countries. I looked at soccer, Olympic Games, both winter and summer sports, basketball, tennis, golf, baseball. And if you compared all of those sports, we're actually relatively equal. You've got some standout performances in golf in particular. Female golf, 23 South Korean females are in the top 50 in the world, which is quite remarkable. And I think you've performed incredibly well in the last two Summer Olympic Games, I think 5th and 8th, beating Australia in both times for the first time ever. So that's an amazing feat. So I look forward to really sharing our journey and our story in developing a sports tech network over the next 30 minutes and obviously through the questions after that. Very quickly, this is my city. This is Melbourne, about 6 million people, right at the bottom of the earth. The sports precinct here, you'll see the Melbourne Cricket Ground, 100,000 seat stadium. The 1956 Olympic Games were held here. We've got the Rod Laver Arena in the tennis centre here, where the Australian Open tennis is held. We have a 30,000 seat soccer stadium here. We've got high performance facilities spread right throughout this particular area for various sports. We've got the city here and then another 50,000 seat stadium over here. And then we've got a Formula One Grand Prix track that sits over here. So we're very, very proud of our infrastructure and accessibility of sport that we have in our city in particular, and it is regarded as one of the sporting capitals of the world. And on the back of that, we see about 60% of our sports technology startups are actually based in Melbourne, in Australia. I just want to briefly go through some of the topics I'll share with you today. Firstly, Australia's sporting brand, lifting our game, what we need to do to get better in sport and sports technology. What is the ASTN? What does the sports technology landscape look like in both a domestic sense in Australia but also internationally? Some of the observations that we're seeing in the international markets and the development and emergence of this sector internationally. And lastly, looking at the opportunities that Australia has to partner into Asia, and certainly an event like this and the role that sports plays in diplomacy and connecting with the rest of the world is very important to our country and should be important to a lot of other countries around the world. So Australia is a sporting brand. Australia, what do you think of as an Asian nation looking at Australia? you probably think of these things: beaches, the Sydney Harbour, kangaroos, Qantas, and Uluru. And we're very, very familiar with that. But we're very, very proud of our sports performance. And we've got 25 million people, and we think we have performed well as a nation in sport for a long period of time, across cycling and basketball and swimming, cricket, athletics, etc. Before we developed the Australian Sports Technologies Network, we really had a look back to think, well, what industries are Australia great at on a global scale? Mining. We have a country that's 76 times bigger in size than Korea. There's a lot of earth to dig up, and we're very good at mining. Agriculture. Again, with that same huge landmass, we have a great credibility in producing fantastic agricultural products for the rest of the world, and particularly the Asian markets. Certainly health and medical technologies. We've got a very strong health and medical system and precinct in Australia. But the fourth industry we think that we're fantastic or have got a global competitive advantage is sport. And on the back of that, we decided to develop up a sports technologies network. Again, our positioning as the ASTN is to continue to position Australia as one of the global leaders in sports technology ecosystem. And I think Melbourne was advertised, but recognised as the sporting capital of the world by the Sports Business Ultimate Sports Cities Award in 2016. And I think Melbourne's won that about 4 or 5 times. So just very briefly looking at some of the key characteristics of the Australian sports industry. We've got an amazing sports culture in attendance. We've got a 100,000-seat stadium here. And I think that stadium alone held 100,000 people for cricket, Australian rules football, rugby and soccer, all in the 1 year, 4 different sports. We have 24 million people, 7.3 million people attend Australian football per annum. I think average attendance is 35,000 per game, which is top 10 in the world. Rugby league, 3.2 million, soccer, 1.8 million, cricket, 1 million, and the Australian Open over 2 weeks, 720,000 people attend the Australian Open in Melbourne through those 2-week period. Formula One Grand Prix is about 300,000. So we've got a wonderful culture of attending a whole multitude of sports events. In regards to our sporting participation, we have excellent pathway programs for young children. And just some very brief statistics, 28% of over 15-year-olds are involved in organised sport. In regards to the younger generation, almost 50% swim and play soccer, about 1 in 3 are involved in athletics, another 1/3 are involved in basketball, and the list goes on. So we've got a very strong culture of participating in organised sport. And that grows from a young age of 6 through to 18. There's often a gap in the sort of the 13 to 14 years. So we've got a lot of these key characteristics emerging from our nation. We have strong performance, a culture of attending, fans, and strong participation. But we've also got what we recognise as some really strong expertise across 7 key areas. Coaching and high performance. A lot of our coaches, in a lot of circumstances, get poached into countries like China and the UK to help develop their systems in those nations. We have a very strong sports system, a federated sports model through the Australian Sports Commission, the Australian Institute of Sport, and through about 70 organised sporting bodies that provide pathway programs. I think we'll talk a little bit later about sports facilities and stadium, but we've got fantastic infrastructure both in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane in particular that is world class. Australia is recognised as being one of the leaders in hosting major sports events, from Olympic Games to Formula One Grand Prix to tennis to international friendlies with the likes of Argentina and Brazil playing in our country. Sports science and medicine, and this is particularly of interest to yourselves. Australia was essentially involved in development of the tertiary sports science curriculum back in the 1980s. And to this day, we have now 30 years of graduates coming through tertiary education systems in sports science and medicine. And a lot of those graduates are now positioned right throughout the world in high-performance programs in the NBA, for example, and European soccer in particular. Education and training, we'll focus on that a little bit later too, but we have a number of high-quality universities delivering both sports science and sports management programs throughout Australia. And sports analytics, athlete tracking, I think you'll see that the emergence of the likes of, say, a Catapult Sport in athlete tracking, GP Sports, through the early 2000s were really the first athlete tracking companies in the world. And we've really leveraged off the back of that. So lifting our game. I've told you all these great things about how well Australia's performing in sport, but we really actually haven't used that strength to develop a technology industry that can take products to the rest of the world. And that's what the Australian sports technology focuses on. It focuses on developing or helping startups to develop the next generation of sports technologies, not only for our own market, where those technologies can be validated and tested into the sports, but can also be taken to the world, and particularly into sophisticated sports markets like North America, like Europe, and the North Asian countries like South Korea and Japan in particular. So these are some of the companies that you may or may not have heard of before, but they're world-class companies out of Australia that catapults in athlete tracking. Sports tech is now called Huddle in sports coding of games. Genius Sports is involved in commercialisation of sports data. Fusion Sport is involved in athlete management systems, and 2XU is a sports performance apparel company. Just a few companies that are within our nation. When we first started the ASTN, we had a report commissioned, and it was called Lifting Our Game. And it was about what do we need to do to develop a sports technology industry in our country. And we saw that these were some of the deficiencies. We needed to improve collaboration between sports, the sports federations, researchers and universities, and industry and startups. And that was lacking. We needed our sports, and that includes the Australian Institute of Sport, to become more innovative in embracing startups and validating new technologies within those sporting organisations and codes. We needed to start to link to the rest of the world, meaning that we need to attend conferences like this with our companies in our network to really understand where are the market opportunities for our countries for our companies in our network around the world. We needed to bring commercial expertise to the table, and that meaning investors. So we talk about how do we bring angel investors, seed capital, early stage venture to help these emerging sports technology companies to grow. So they are the deficiencies in our market that we try to address through the ASTN. So what is the ASTN? A bit of background, I was involved in developing the ASTN back in 2012. It started back in 2011, but we were formally established 2012. We are an industry-led body. We are not a government body. So the industry drives our particular body. We're a not-for-profit organisation. So we are driven by memberships from the companies in our network and organisations, sponsorships from companies, but also some government funding as well. I've personally engaged with about 500 sports technology startups over the last 5 years and engaged with about 2,500 stakeholders, from sports bodies, universities, researchers, service providers to the sector. We have 150 plus members, and we work on a budget, a small budget, of about 400 to 500,000 US dollars per annum. When we talk about who the ASTN is involved in with engaging, there's a lot of organisations involved. When we look at the ecosystem, we're talking about, it's not a great pointer, is it? Green on green. National sporting bodies, so sports federations are involved in our network. Universities are involved in our network. We have the Australian Sporting Goods Association involved in our network, which represents the retailers, the wholesalers, and the global distribution arms of large corporates. We have the small to medium businesses and the startups. We have investors, and we also have government. All of these organisations play a very, very important role in developing our sector. So what is the ASTN's role? And we fill a gap in the market that no one else plays in Australia. And that's really to provide a leadership in commercialisation, development and promotion of Australian-inspired sports technologies. And that role continues to evolve in connecting to the rest of the world. Our goal is to create the next generation of great Australian sports brands, to build exports for our nation, and to build the capacity of all of those stakeholders in that previous slide. When we developed the ASTM back in 2012, we developed a very definitive 3 to 5 year plan, and that revolved around developing a suite of programs and activities to support the entire sector, and particularly the sports technology companies that we saw coming through. And I think this is particularly relevant if Korea is interested in developing a coordinated approach to developing a sports technology industry. We have industry engagement programs, being conferences, networking events, masterclasses for entrepreneurs to help them understand what it means to innovate and engage with investors. We have investment pitching competitions to help the startups to pitch their new ideas to investors. We're just about to launch a hackathon concept into the Formula One Grand Prix, and we'll have a co-working space that's in development. Underlying that, we develop programs for the sports federations to help them understand how do they integrate technology and digital innovation into the way they operate their sports. We deal with the researchers to help them understand, well, what are the genuine market needs of their great research that they're doing. We have a startup program for high potential startups where they are given free advice from experts to help them take their companies going forward. We have what we call growth revenue programs for companies that have already got products in market. And we obviously bring investors to the table as well. In regards to our trade and global access, again, playing the role of diplomacy and connecting to the rest of the world, we have outbound trade missions. We had 15 companies go to the USA. In March of this year, we went to the Golden State Warriors, Red Bull, San Francisco 49ers, US Olympic Committee, Stanford, UCLA, Berkeley, as examples of how we're pushing our companies out into the market. Our state government in Melbourne has actually an inbound mission where they invite delegates from around the world to come to Melbourne to engage with our industry and to understand our infrastructure and landscape. And I can provide you with some more details on that. That's likely to happen at the end of March of next year around the Formula One Grand Prix. So international delegates are invited to that. We also have a number of other programs that we link into. UCLA runs a program around helping international companies to develop market entry strategies for the US. And one of our members has actually developed an International World Series conference on sports analytics. That's Melbourne in August, Mumbai in October, London in November, Amsterdam in May, and I think Shenzhen and Tokyo are on the horizon. So this is all of these activities are all about creating a world-class sports technologies industry, and we've implemented these programs and activities to support the sector. Our key partnerships, the Australian Government and the Australian Sports Commission have been supporters of the ASTN since we established. The Australian Sports Commission is the peak body of sport in Australia. The Australian Institute of Sport is the high performance body in Australia. PwC, an advisory arm, and we have partnerships with the Sports Analytics Conference, our government sector, the Sporting Goods Association, and also this company here is an investor company. They invest in startup companies. They're all very important partners for the ASTN. In regards to who have our inspirations and our champions been to develop this industry, we look at people like Sean Holthouse, who developed Catapult Sport. Catapult Sport is the leading athlete tracking solution in the world. 1,500 elite sporting teams use that product around the world. Was developed in Melbourne. Someone like Alan Hahn. Alan was the former head scientist at the Australian Institute of Sport. Alan, as an example, back in 2001 wanted to start tracking his athletes, and he made a seed investment into the development of Catapult Sport. Again, really important people in regards to creating a sector like this is people like Kate Lundy, was former Sports Minister of Australia, and she is now currently on the ASTN board. And she was a key driver in ensuring that we had seed funding back in 2012 to help create the ASTN. John Wiley is chair of the Australian Sports Commission and has provided us with financial support along the way. In connecting with the rest of the world and thinking what we call born global or die local, in regards to creating companies that are servicing and thinking about servicing a global market from day one. We've engaged with the likes of Jerry Engel from Berkeley in San Francisco. He's the founding head of the Entrepreneurship Center of UC Berkeley. Steve Blank, many of you may know in the startup game, he's a billionaire, but he's also the founder of the Lean Launchpad methodology for startups. Erez Morag, who was the game changer from Nike. He was at Nike for about 15 years. And people like Bob Foster from UCLA have all been very important in helping us develop our programs to help our companies come through. So what does the sports technology landscape look like from our perspective? We have a very, very, very broad definition of what sports technology is, and we see it as broad as innovations in product, in sports product, being performance wear, protective wear, sports product and equipment. So we're talking about new innovations, whether it be small material changes in those products or disruptive changes in those products, right through to wearable technologies, sports analytics, whether it be video or data, stadium and venue tech, and digital solutions for either improving the way a sport functions or operates, right through to fan engagement. So with the ASTN starting back in 2012, we've been dealing with companies right across these particular definitions. And the reason why we do that is that we're really probably acknowledging some of the work that Kevin's doing, is that there's a real convergence between these product innovations at the top and these real these digital innovations around the bottom. A lot of these products are being used to capture data now, which we saw about 5 years ago that was going to happen. So it captures that convergence between product innovation and digital innovation in the marketplace. These are just some examples of all Australian sports technology products, from knee braces to performance wear to gamified fitness systems to mobile apps to communicate with mums and dads and kids in local sports clubs, to safety devices, to athlete tracking systems, to smart helmets, to biomechanics real-time measurement. That's an example of the types of technologies that we're seeing emerge from our market. I won't take credit for this map. I'll take some of our friends in Europe developed this map, and it's quite complex, but essentially this is a good picture of the landscape of the global sports technology industry, and this will change over time, but I think importantly to recognise that on this left-hand side and down here, it's all about performance analytics. We're talking about wearables, injury prevention, training and scouting solutions. On this side here, it's all about operations, fan engagement, commercial technologies for sport, fan engagement, digital strategy, broadcasting, marketing technologies. And underlying that from the bottom and across the top, we're seeing a lot of the big technology vendors come to the table, providing infrastructure layers to support the rest of what's happening in the sector. Then in the middle, we've got these enabling technologies. VR is an enabling technology for the sector, video and media services. So it's quite a complex diagram, but I think it gives you an understanding as to the types of the segmentation of the market that we're seeing as it moves forward. I won't go into this, but here's some Australian sports technology companies that are members within our network. Everything from fan engagement technologies to operational technologies for sport, right through to performance wear and performance tech. Excuse me. There are three main sectors of sports technology that we're seeing emerge. One area is what we call sports performance technologies, and in a lot of circumstances applicable to yourselves in the sports science game. We're seeing instrumented sports equipment, the instrumented sports, so we're talking about everything from gamified fitness systems, instrumenting sports equipment and products with sensors to capture data, smart stadium for the purposes of capturing data on athletes. I'm not talking about fan engagement here, I'm talking about capturing data on athletes. Then we look at wearables we're talking about wearables and diagnostic solutions. We're talking about smart garment technologies that have, again, embedded sensors. We're talking about using virtual and augmented reality to capture data on athletes. And then we start to look at the AI, the machine learning, the data analytics, the storage and management of data. So that's a sector in its own right that we're seeing emerge, and Australia is particularly good at this particular segment. Excuse me. In the end, this segment is all about improving decision making on the athlete and the team performance, whether that be performance, protection, prevention of injury, profiling of the athletes, and engaging with the athletes. The next hotspot we see is around sports management systems. And this is about how do we manage the sports federation better, how do we manage the sports club better, and how do we manage the individual sports clubs that we are dealing with in our everyday lives. So we talk about CRM, membership, competition, events management systems, communications and engagement platforms, athlete management systems, learning and development platforms, content, merchandise. So these really have a strong commercial, operational efficiency focus, which is very different to the high performance end that we saw before. It's all about engagement, monetisation and operational efficiency. So how does the sport run better? How do they engage better with their participants and fans in their market? How do they turn that engagement into money for the sport to help it sustain itself? The third hotspot we're seeing is really the fan engagement, fan experience in the stadium tech. So we're talking about stadium infrastructure, solutions, technologies, stadium and events management systems, performance tracking, data and analytics, and the fan experience. So all of these are about how do we improve the experience of fans. So you and me as fans of an individual sport, whether that be in stadium or it could actually be at home when we're watching a sport in the broadcast. So they're the three hotspots: stadium tech, sports management tech, and high performance tech. Just in closing, I'd like to share with you some of the emerging trends that we're seeing in the global market. We're starting to see sports technology accelerator programs emerge across particularly the more sophisticated markets, such as Western Europe, the US and Israel, and by that we mean dedicated programs to help the startups to connect to investors. I think both Peter and Kevin mentioned this in their presentations earlier, but where the way we consume sport in regards to content is becoming very different. It's just not the Fox Sports anymore. It's live streaming, it's over-the-top technology through social media platforms, it's virtual reality, and it's the big data. It's the large technology companies coming to the market and using their large databases to leverage new content into them. And as I say, the big vendors are coming to the sports technology industry, whether it be Amazon or SAP or Intel or Microsoft, who have got a relationship in Madrid. They're all about positioning themselves in the market, from stadium tech to digital rights to enterprise management solutions for large sporting bodies. In regards to the venture capital market, globally we see it being very small still, but it's emerging. Sport on a global venture capital stage is still seen as a very niche industry. E-games has a more attractive value proposition to venture capitalists than sport does because of the size of the market. Some of the hotspots the venture capital guys like is fan engagement, content, e-games, VR, AR, because they've got an expanded market opportunity beyond just sport. As I mentioned before, some other hotspots, anything about fan engagement technologies, whether that be social platforms, in-stadium platforms. Again, it's about monetisation for the sports. I think we're seeing across the world varying levels of technology adoption by the leagues themselves. And I think Peter mentioned earlier, I think the NBA in the US is certainly leading the way in that sphere. Everything from in-game technologies around tracking the performance of players through to fan engagement into the likes of the Philippines that they see as one of the strongest engagement markets in basketball in the world. FIFA traditionally has been well behind but slowly catching up in regards to adoption of technologies. I think reinforcing a lot of the points that have been made before, the increasing application of sports data, whether that be used in decision making for high performance, it could be used in media, it can be used in wagering and gambling, and it can often be influenced, the appetite for sports data in a particular market may actually be influenced by player unions that may restrict the amount of data that can be captured on an individual person, right through to wagering regulations in a market. For example, the US sports wagering market is very restricted compared to, say, an Australian or UK market. Excuse me. Again, instrumentation of sports products and equipment. So we're talking about everything from instrumenting balls to instrumenting garments to even instrumenting new machines like hamstring testing devices that measure strength of hamstrings and groins, etc. I think with the concussion issue raising its head over the last 5 to 10 years, there's an increasing amount of duty of care required to athletes around the world. That means anything to do with protection of head, knee, ankles, joints is a real hot spot for the entrepreneurs coming through the market. I think we're seeing some of the elite performance technologies like catapult sport, for example, in the elite markets. As technology costs go down, they're starting to push into what they call a semi-elite and prosumer market. So again, the opportunities, excuse me, can I have a water, please? Certainly the professionalisation of the next tier of sport below the elite sport is wanting to adopt some of the technologies that are being used in the elite markets. And so there's opportunities to push down. Thank you. Particularly in Australia, and I don't know whether this trend is likewise in Asia in particular, but we're certainly seeing the professionalisation of female sport. The last 2 years in Australia in particular, we've seen commercial broadcast rights and professional leagues develop for female sports. And what we're seeing is the emergence of the next generation of role models for our female athletes. And that's a really important trend that we're seeing. Consumer wearables, I think Peter might have mentioned this earlier, Jawbone, Fitbit, what actionable insights are those technologies actually providing to the end user? And there's probably a big question mark in a lot of circumstances. Just closing out on this one, in regards to sports tech, there's often a link between sports tech and health and med tech, and the application of more sophisticated health and medical technologies into sport. I think there's still a disconnect between sport and health and med tech, but it will converge over time. And I think what we'll see is more health and med tech technologies come into sport over the next 5 years. Emergence of esports, professionalisation of leagues, large elite clubs buying franchises. We've mentioned that one before. And I think we see, particularly in regards to market opportunities, the awakening of the giants. And I think we saw some stats earlier about the Chinese sports market growing from 200 billion to 800 billion over the next 10 years. There's some immense opportunities in that market. India is somewhat behind China in regards to its sophistication, but there are niche opportunities in India as well. But I think we're seeing in those markets improved sporting infrastructure, we're seeing professionalisation of leagues, and we're seeing stronger athlete pathways. Excuse me. And then we're starting to see the gamification of fitness and training, so using technology to benchmark yourself against yourself or others around the world, real time, using VR, using AR, really gamifying the fitness experience using technology. Some quick observations on international markets. So we saw the ASTN develop back in 2012 as one of the first sports technology networks in the world. I must give credit to these guys, Sports and Technology out of the Netherlands. I think they were the first. But we're seeing the likes of SDSI in San Diego, the ASTN, Hype Foundation is an Israel-based sports technology ecosystem and also a venture capital company, European Sports Innovation Network out of Boston, Sports Technology Awards out of the UK, Sports Techie is an international publication. So this is an example of an industry that's moving out of its infancy and starting to mature somewhat. And individual organisations are taking advantage of it. And we connect with all of these organisations around the world, mind you. We know the people that run those organisations. In regards to the corporates coming to the table, again, a lot of familiar brands that we would know here, but again, they are starting to focus on development of sports technology. LA Dodgers have a sports technology accelerator. The Philadelphia 76ers in NBA have an innovation lab. The Minnesota Vikings have developed a sports tech accelerator. We're seeing the Global Sports Innovation Centre out of Madrid, with Microsoft driving that. So we're seeing all around the world emergence of corporates, of elite sporting organisations, and I suppose not-for-profits like us developing the industry further. Just some examples of some international conferences that we find certainly of interest and of benefit. Certainly MIT Sloan in Boston is regarded as the #1 sports technology industry from our perspective in the world. We attended that conference with about 15 of our companies in March of this year. Incredible content and value. Sports Analytics Conference, we had 1,000 people in Melbourne attend that. Now we're starting to see the real emergence of some real niche technology. The first ever sports VR, AR conference that was held only this last week. Wearable technologies conferences, SEAT in the US as well. So in regards to the ASTN and the opportunities in Asia, we are only starting to engage with the Asian markets we see. We've certainly had some strong engagement into India. I've had my chairman present in China about 3 or 4 times in the last 3 months. And certainly in regards to the North Asian markets, South Korea and Japan were only just starting. So as I mentioned before, we see China and India being some great opportunities in those markets moving forward. I think we acknowledge that there's a really strong appetite for the knowledge that we have in Australia about sports technology, sports innovation. So we've got a really strong, credible brand in that space. We certainly see that there's opportunities around the sophisticated sports markets, and we see South Korea and Japan being 2 of those. And there are certainly opportunities for yourselves to participate in inbound events into Australia through the Victorian Government VIP program and also trade missions. So just in closing out, some of the barriers that we see for ourselves as an Australian market, certainly we see the Western markets as easier entry points, just more from the fact of the language and cultural barriers that do exist in Asia. And really finding the right route to market in Asia is a challenge for our companies. It's such a huge market. Who are the right partners to find? How does the product need to be different for the Asian market? And really understanding how do you scale a small validated product in an Australian market into a large market like Asia. So I'd more than anything welcome your thoughts, your input, your feedback on how Australia and South Korea can partner together in sport more and provide inbound and outbound opportunities for our countries around sport and sports innovation. So certainly I thank you for your time. Thank you for inviting me to this fantastic event, and it's fantastic to be in your country over the last few days. So thank you very much, and we always welcome you to Australia. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg. We also welcome you to Korea too. So it's also time to have a discussion session. So now let us get started with a third discussion. Before the discussion, we also rearrange the stage for that session. So for the second session, I'd like to ask Hyunduk Kim, Professor Keimyung University Sport Marketing, to come up to the stage as a moderator. And next, I'd like to ask Chongyun Kim, Director, Wesley Quest, to come up to the stage as a panelist. So through the presentation he talked about how to build a world-class sports technologies ecosystem in a regional market, giving an example of Australian sports technologies network. And also we have got to know that they have been trying to create an ecosystem that helps grow the next generation of a great Australian sports innovation brands and build sports experts and also build the capacity of the Australian sports tech ecosystem. And there will be a lot of things or issues that we would like to discuss about through this discussion session. So let's get started with the discussion session.
안녕하십니까. I start with Korean greetings. Whenever I'm asked to do presiding work for Korean conferences, I always say that conferences doesn't have to be this kind of strict and well-mannered. So all the respected guests are here from other side of the global sports industry, global world. They're all here to answer and disseminate their knowledges and share their expertise. So let's try to ask as much as possible to our respected speakers. So that'll help us make this moment more grateful and memorable. So our Craig Hill from ASTN, Australia, I wish you all enjoyed his Australian accent. And that's why
I hope I wasn't speaking too fast.
I'm trying to understand still. Our Kim Jong-un, director of Wesley Quest, one of the data analysis company in Korea, a sports data analysis company, a consultation company, and he's going to, because of his Australian accent, he's going to discuss in Korean language. So all the audiences here can be more involved. So thank you for the input and introduction to the ASTN and Australian sports industry. I appreciate that. And I'd like to start with this question. And ASTN, you are the pioneer in the sports technology industry, sports technology, and IT and ICT, and we talked about all the devices which is supporting our services and make our sports industry for the betterment. And what do you see? What is the core value or mission of the ASTN you want to deliver?
So when the ASTN was considering to develop back in 2011, so we started planning around development of the ASTN. It must have been October 2011. Firstly, we wanted to address a gap that no other organisation in the Australian sports system was developing. The Australian Sports Commission is a peak body for the sector, and that focuses on getting Australians involved in organised sport through about 70 different sports in Australia. You've got the Australian Institute of Sport that focuses on high performance. They were interested that we developed because we were looking to be an independent body that was not for profit, that was not government, that they could engage with in regards to development and nurturing of new sports digital technologies. So the gap that we service is as an independent body of individual companies that can liaise with sport. The other thing that I suppose our primary focus is around jobs, investment and export for Australia in regards to the development of new technology. So although we deal with the Department of Sport on one side in regards to government, we actually deal just as much with the departments of industry and innovation on the other side, because in the end we validate in high performance in a lot of circumstances and we validate the technologies in national sports federations, but in the end we want to create scalable sports technology solutions for global markets, and that's what our mandate is.
So in your presentation you mentioned about your ASTN's annual budget was about $400,000 US. But what are the revenue sources for that? Since you are not, you said you are
Yeah,
not a
so-
profit organization.
Yeah, so we're a not-for-profit. Our funding comes from memberships from organisations in those individual circles that I had on the diagram. So that's national sporting bodies, universities, startups, sports companies, investors, etc. Half of our money comes from those members and also larger sponsorships from companies within that network. And then our other major source is through government. So we get a little bit of money from federal government, which is the national, and we get some money from state government. So it's sort of 50-50, private, 50% government.
Government and sponsors,
Yep.
supporters. let's say.
And then obviously delegate fees for different programs and so forth.
Thank you for the answer. Let me lend the mic to Mr. Kim.
안녕하세요. 저는 그냥 한국말로 하겠습니다. 방금 프레젠테이션을 들으면서 저희가 좀 여러 가지 많이 생각해야 될 게 있다고 봤습니다. 가장 큰 이유는 호주가 인구가 2,400만 명이고 우리가 5천만 명이고요. GDP를 보니까 우리가 1조 3,900억 원인 1조 5,200억인데 호주가 1.3,900억 원이고요. 무역 규모로 봐도 우리가 8이고 호주가 23입니다. 그다음에 이제 가장 큰 리그가 아까 사진 보여주실 때 10만 명 들어오는 경기장 보여주셨지만 전체적으로 봤을 때 1년간 전체 관중이 들어오는 것에서 700만 명이 맥스였는데 우리 야구가 지금 800만 명이 넘어가고 있거든요. 그럼 시장 규모나 여러 가지 상황으로 봤을 때 우리가 호주보다 혁신을 못할 이유가 무엇가 있을까? 왜 스포츠 분야에서 이런 혁신적인 부분이나 기술을 통해서 새로움을 만드는 거에 뒤처질까라는 생각을 계속 좀 하게 됐고 그런 부분이 향후에 이제 저희가 이런 산업 컨퍼런스라는 게 곧 우리나라의 스포츠 산업을 어떻게 하면 키울 수 있을까라는 질문으로 가는데 그런 부분에서 좀 굉장히 많이 생각할 것을 좀 던져주시는 그런 프레젠테이션이었다고 좀 느껴졌습니다. 그래서 제가 조금 생각하기로는 그럼 한국이 왜 이렇게 혁신이 느릴까라고 봤을 때 저는 이제 비즈니스 컨설팅을 하는 쪽인데요. 굉장히 많은 인더스트리와 기업들을 만나보고 또 스포츠 쪽도 해보지만 스포츠 쪽이 가장 좀 폐쇄적이고 그다음에 이제 기득권을 유지하기 위한 싸움이 많은 곳으로 느껴졌습니다. 그게 무슨 얘기냐면 기득권을 유지한다는 것이 경험에 의한 의사결정을 많이 하시는 곳이라는 뜻인데 그렇게 되면 이제 새로움을 받아들이거나 또는 오픈 이노베이션 하기에 상당히 걸림돌이 많은 곳이라는 것을 또 알 수 있는 이런 체계가 되는 것이죠. 그래서 지난 여름에 대한사회가 굉장히 재미있는 레포트를 발표했는데요. 구글이 만약에 혁신 수준이 100이라 그러면 한국이 평균 57점 정도밖에 안 나온다는 얘기를 하면서 그런 이유가 뭐냐면 한국이 혁신이라고 그랬을 때 가장 중요한 요소를 뽑으면 내부의 역량 이야기를 많이 한다는 거예요. 그다음에 의지가 중요하다 하는데 대부분 성공하는 혁신 기업들의 특성은 글로벌 네트워크를 통해서 그 문제를 풀 수 있는 가장 적합한 전문가들을 찾는 방식을 가져간다는 거거든요. 그런 이유 중에 가장 중요한 것이 이젠 문제가 너무 복잡하게 엮여 있기 때문에 한 사람이나 한 개의 조직이 풀기엔 한계가 있는 그런 상황으로 간다는 것입니다. 그래서 우리가 앞으로 이제 산업을 좀 키우려고 한다 그러면 어떻게 글로벌 리딩 컴퍼니들과 협력할 수 있는 구조를 가질 것인가 굉장히 중요한 요소라고 봤습니다. 발표 자료에 보면 이노스케이프 마켓 맵이라고 해가지고 정말 글로벌리 어마어마한 실력을 가진 회사들이 아주 촘촘하게 박혀 있는 거를 볼 수 있는데 우리가 또 그런 회사를 카피하거나 따라가는 정책을 피면은 영원히 따라가지 못할 것 같고요. 그런 회사들이랑 같이 협력하면서 가장 중요한 게 앞에 있는 회사들이 미래를 만들기 위해서 어떤 질문을 하는지를 좀 알아내는 것 이건 상당히 중요한 요소라고 좀 생각을 했습니다. 특히 이제 우리나라가 하다 보면은 정부 정책이 이제 국산화란 명목 때문에 한글 작업만 하고 또 솔루션들이 늦게 나오는 경우들이 있는데 그렇게 되면 이제 영원히 시장을 좀 따라가기 힘들지 않겠느냐 이런 걸 봤고요. 하나만 더 이야기하면은 정부의 정책에 대해서 많이 기대들을 하시고 이제 사실 지난 정권이 워낙 엉망으로 하고 또 스포츠 산업 자체를 망가뜨렸던 정권이기 때문에 이번에는 좀 새로운 방향으로 가기를 기대를 많이 하실 것 같은데 정부의 역할이 돈을 주는 것에서 정보를 제공하는 역할로 조금 변해가야 되지 않나 이런 생각을 합니다. 정보라 함은 시장과 고객이 과연 우리 사업을 할 때 어떤 것을 요구하는지를 알려주는 것을 좀 심도 있게 분석해서 제공하는 작업들이 중요하다고 봤습니다. 그런 이유가 뭐냐면 지금 아까도 이제 설명하신 거 보면 엑셀러레이터라는 사람들이 많이 나오는데 LA 다저스도 엑셀러레이터를 하고 있고 또 뭐 여러 가지 프로스포츠 팀이 엑셀러레이터를 진행하고 있지 않습니까? 그다음에 뭐 구글도 엑셀러레이터 프로그램도 있고 그다음에 그 마이크로소프트는 스페인에서 이노베이션 랩을 운영하는데 그런 엑셀러레이터가 가장 큰 차이점은 뭐냐면 돈만 주는 게 아니라 돈을 준 다음에 이 기업이 성장할 수 있도록 전문가들의 네트워크를 통해서 아주 적극적으로 지원해주는 그런 구조라는 거가 좀 다릅니다. 근데 우리가 이제 정부가 일하는 방식을 보면은 좀 안타까운 게 돈을 준 다음에 돈을 준 기업이 성장하도록 도와주는 이렇게 네트워크를 가동하는 것이 아니라 대부분 돈을 준 다음부터는 정부의 역할이 감시자의 역할로 바뀌게 되죠. 그래서 정부의 펀딩을 받은 기업들이 정말 깊이 있게 고민하는 시간을 서류 작업하는 쪽으로 많이 뺏기는 경우들이 있기 때문에 이제 그런 부분을 좀 바꿔나가고 고객을 알아가게 하는 쪽으로 좀 변하는 게 좋다 가는 방향을 했으면 좋겠다고 봤습니다. 특히 이제 지금 인상 깊게 봤던 게 이제 에코시스템이라는 말을 많이 하고 또 우리나라도 어떻게 하면 에코시스템을 만들어서 성장시킬까라는 거는 뭐 역대 정권부터 늘 하던 이야기 중 하나였는데요. 이거 굉장히 좀 잘해야 될 것 같습니다. 왜냐하면 에코시스템을 만드는 시간은 굉장히 오래 걸릴 텐데 대부분 정치 사이클에 맞춰가지고 이제 국가의 발전 전략이나 지원 체계가 바뀌다 보니까 6개의 그 각각의 참여하는 멤버들이 모여서 이야기하다 끝나는 경우가 상당히 많아요. 그래서 이제 매번 에코시스템 만든다 그러는데 들어왔다가 이야기하고 끝나고 또 들어왔다 이야기하고 끝나고 해서 에코시스템을 한 번도 못 만들어보고 이름만 바뀌면서 가는 경우가 많았거든요. 그래서 어떻게 하면 체계적으로 좀 긴 호흡을 가지고 또 정부가 변해도 그러니까 스포츠 산업 쪽에 있는 분들을 많이 이렇게 만나보고 정부 정책에서 얘기를 해보면 사무관 한 명만 바뀌어도 의사결정 기준이 바뀐다는 말씀을 좀 많이 하시는데 그런 게 아니라 계속해서 좀 지속성을 갖고 나갈 수 있는 그리고 보시면은 우리나라가 사실 뭐 스포츠 이야기를 많이 하지만 아직도 좀 부족한 부분이 굉장히 많거든요. 그래서 어떻게 팔로워로서 앞에 있는 사람들과 협력해가면서 또 전략적인 분야를 선정해서 이렇게 투자를 할 수 있을지 이런 부분을 보는 것이 좀 중요하다고 봤습니다. 그래서 다시 한번 좀 좋은 이 프레젠테이션 해줬던 크래키에게 감사함 드리고 또 이런 여러 가지 해주셨던 이야기들이 상당히 우리한테 많은 앞으로 전략을 수립하고 국가 발전을 만드는데 많은 질문을 던졌던 시간이라고 이렇게 봤습니다.
Did you want me to comment on what you just said? Yeah. Sorry? Yeah. You covered a lot of ground there. I think my very first remarks in my presentation was that the performance of South Korea in sport is very comparable to the performance of Australia in sport. I would say that the South Korean appetite and delivery of innovation is up here, and that's recognised globally. So your level of innovation is outstanding in this country. I would say that Australia is mediocre, middle. We haven't had if you have a look at the OECD innovation statistics, Australia ranks relatively poorly in regards to translating as an example, industry research collaboration outcomes ranks 33 out of 33 countries. Very, very poor. So I would say from my perspective that I'm very envious of your innovation system, and I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for the sports industry to better leverage off the immense capability that your innovation system has. And we're talking about ICT, design, engineering, medical, all the STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, that you're way ahead of Australia. I must say that your remarks about the role that government play and the frustrations that you have had with government around industry and innovation policy, we have the same problem in our country. So don't worry about that. I've had incredible battles with government in regards to supporting our sector. Unfortunately, I would say that our industry and innovation policy in our country over the last 5 years has been stagnant and poor at best. So I have the same frustrations that you do with government. And I think that's why it's really important to get the private sector. If you're looking at developing a sports technology network in Korea, it would be activating sport, activating the key technology players like the bigger vendors, and bringing the startups to the table and seeing whether you can coordinate an industry plan that supports the sector. And I think the last point that I want to raise, that again, this level of innovation and proximity to the big markets in Asia and the emerging markets in Asia, you've got a tremendous opportunity to not only service your sports sector here, but to push those technologies out into those emerging markets that you would know well just through your trade anyway, which Australia doesn't have that. Australia doesn't have the market intelligence of the Asian markets like you would know. So I think you've got a tremendous opportunity to drive a sector based on your performance, the culture, the innovation culture. Forget about government and industry and innovation policy.
Yeah, okay.
Bring private sector to the table, and if government comes on board, great.
Thank you. 계속 한국말로 하겠습니다. 그러니까 이게 평균의 함정에 빠지면 안 되는데요. 한국이 외국에서 볼 때에 보이는 한국과 한국의 내부의 이제 산업을 분석을 하다 보면 한국의 이 경제 구조 시스템이 굉장히 이제 불균형적이라는 것이죠. 그래서 대기업들이 대부분 이끌어가고 있는 그런 경제 시스템이고 대기업에 의해서 혁신이 만들어지는 체계이기 때문에 그런 기업들이 전체를 이끌어가는 구조인 거거든요. 그래서 제가 아주 정확한 숫자는 아직 정확한 기억이 안 납니다만 현대, 삼성, LG가 전체 주식 시장에서 갖고 있는 총량이 거의 70% 정도가 되는 이런 경제 구조 자체가 하나 이제 이 스포츠 인더스트리는 상대적으로 아주 약한데도 불구하고 같이 좀 커 보이는 이런 착시 현상이 있는데 스포츠 산업을 만들고 또 이제 새로운 기업들을 키워나갈 때 이런 착시 현상을 좀 걷어내고 우리가 진짜 있는 데가 어디고 어떤 방향으로 가야 되고 무엇을 해야 될지를 보는 게 굉장히 중요하다고 하나 생각이 되고요. 그래서 그런 관점에서 봤을 때 또 하나 어려운 것도 뭐냐면 한국에 이제 저는 이제 프로스포츠 산업 쪽을 이야기를 하면 프로스포츠가 대부분 대기업들이 주도를 하고 있는데요. 프로스포츠 구단을 통해서 마케팅하는 효과가 거의 다 없어지는 시대에 살고 있습니다. 그래서 이제 아까 이제 VR을 통한 광고도 굉장히 재밌는 사례 중 하나였는데 이게 그러니까 예를 들면 우리 대기업이 뭔가 잘못했을 때 스포츠 팬들이 막 불같이 일어나가지고 그 기업을 디펜드해주고 이러지는 않거든요. 옹호해주고 하진 않거든요. 그다음에 다 인터넷으로 찾아보고 제일 저렴하고 제일 좋은 걸 사지 내가 서포트하는 팀이기 때문에 이 팀의 물건을 사겠다고 하는 사람은 좀 없어요. 그래서 그렇게 그 대기업이 프로스포츠 구단을 운영해야 될 이유도 없어지는 상황에서 또 전체적인 산업 구조에서 보면은 우리나라의 그 스포츠 산업의 전체적인 이 통계적인 부분은 되게 재밌는 게 뭐냐면 소비 시장이 계속 성장하는데요. 공급을 하는 이 기업들의 시장은 정체거나 하락을 하고 있습니다. 시장은 커지는데 기업이 정체하고 있다는 얘기는 뭐냐면 그 빈 공간을 외국계 기업이 다 채우고 있다는 거예요. 시장이 크다는 게 나이키, 아디다스 이런 사람들만 좋지 실제 내부에 있는 우리 기업들이 좋은 거가 별로 없거든요. 그러면 우리가 연구해야 될 게 뭐냐면 왜 사람들이 브랜드를 거론해서 죄송합니다만 프로스페러스를 사지 않고 나이키를 사는 이유가 무엇인지가 분석이 돼야 된다는 거죠. 영역별로 그것도. 그리고 그 분석된 정보가 기업들한테 가가지고 기업들이 그 정보를 기반으로 신상품을 만들든지 새로움을 만들든지 마케팅을 하는 이 구조가 가는 게 상당히 중요하다고 봅니다. 근데 지금 기업들을 만나보면 스포츠 산업에 있는 기업들의 80%가 1억 미만 4명 이하의 사람들로 구성된 아주 영세한 기업들인데요. 이분들이 요청하시는 건 딱 두 개입니다. 돈 많이 달라, 우리 제품 팔아달라. 우리 제품 팔아달라는 걸 조금 멋있게 마케팅해달라 이렇게 표현하시죠. 근데 이미 시장에서 원하지 않는 제품을 만들어 놓고 팔아달라고 아무리 해야 방법은 별로 없는 거예요. 실리콘밸리에서 수많은 벤처 캐피탈들을 만나봤을 때 이 친구들이 하는 얘기가 뭐냐면 실리콘밸리도 열의 9은 죽는다는 거거든요. 근데 그런 인프라를 가지고 있지 않은, 아직은 좀 부족한 우리나라가 지금 이번 정권에서 또 뭐 스타트업 많이 만들어가지고 일자리 창출하겠다 이런 이야기 많이 하는데 그거 이미 김대중 정권 때 한번 해봤던 거지 않습니까? 그래서 이런 방향성 같은 거를 좀 과거에 실패했던 방향성이라든지 이런 걸 잘 보면서 향후에 우리가 어떻게 가야 될지를 좀 설계하는 것. 그 다음에 크랙이 말씀해 주신 것처럼 우리가 갖고 있는 사실 장점도 있으니까 그런 장점들을 어떻게 적용할 것인가 이런 부분들이 고민되는 게 중요하고 무엇보다도 정치 논리가 아니라 정말 산업을 발전시키는 논리로서 가는 것이 필요하다고 보여집니다.
Let me add more comments. Also, organizer of this conference is CASPO, Korean Sports Promotion Foundations. And the basic, what I know about is, well, basic function of this CASPO is they try to fund funds available for the startup programs and startup companies. So it is unfortunate to say that we don't have already popular sports-based sports technology companies. This is the company. See, even though we are putting a significant amount of governmental budget and a budget, but we don't have very like a well-known sports brand in all around the world. That's really unfortunate, especially for the taekwondo. Even for the taekwondo, for instance, taekwondo, we are wearing German-made crosses. That's another issue we need to get over with. So, but I see a bright side because Korea, the CASPO is also trying to organize a research institute in one of the metropolitan cities in around the world, including Daegu and Daejeon, and they are going. They are designed to. The main purpose of the establishment of that organization is they try to support those startup companies and those small companies working in the sports industry. So seed money is available for them, but how we utilize and how we make it grow is our responsibilities for all the sports people in Korea.
Do you want me to respond to that?
Yes.
About seed money? Or
Oh, not the seed money. I may tell you more about the Korea status of the Korean sports industry. Under the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Tourism from the 2012, we spend more money than other areas compared to the tourism and the culture, which is a content industry. We start to spend more, like putting more money because of all those mega sporting events we are going to operate. So, but I don't know.
I think if you are looking to develop a sports technology network in a similar way to what we've done, and I'll go back historically to what we did. Back in October 2011, I had the guy from Berkeley that came out to Australia because I'd engaged him with some other activities. He's a innovations cluster expert. He is a venture capitalist. He's based in Silicon Valley. I said to him, I've got 30 stakeholders in sport that are going to sit at the table today, and we're thinking about developing a sports technology network. Those organisations included national federations, it included universities, it included startups, and it included government. One of the actions from that workshop was that, well, firstly, the guy from Berkeley said, if you could replicate that group of people in the room by 15, 20 times, then you've got potentially a network of experts to create an industry off. One of the actions from that workshop was that someone had to go and create a business case to develop the network up that could be signed off by the individual companies that attended and send it to the Minister for Sport. So I stupidly put my hand up and I said, I'll do it for free. So we put together a business case supported by industry, and 6 months later we'd received seed funding from the Minister of Sport directly to run 2 or 3 conferences, investment pitching competitions, entrepreneurship masterclasses, to start to engage the industry and bring it together. And so all of a sudden we found, there was a lot of startups that were coming to the AS10 and saying, well, we're building this athlete tracking system, and we've got this athlete management system, and we're developing this wearable technology. And then we're all of a sudden seeing that there's all of these different companies at the table that we didn't even know existed until the name was out there. So I think, I know you've got the big technology players in this country. I just see that there's an opportunity to engage with them. There would be startups out there in the market. There are researchers out here today that with trying to educate them around some entrepreneurship education, around how can they apply their expertise to develop up a new solution or a tool or a product. There's lots of things you can do, but I think you need to potentially undertake a bit of an audit as to what does the sports industry look like here in South Korea, and then pick out the real strengths that you have in the market, and then start to build something from there. But it needs to be industry-led, but it needs to be supported like the organisations that have sponsored this particular event today.
Yes, we have all the essentials. We are the producer of good cars and the semiconductors at the most reasonable prices and around the world. But that part is kind of missing. So we have essential things.
But there's legacy innovators out of all of those large corporate organisations that you have here in Korea. It doesn't have to be sports related. Sports is just an application of technology, a new application of technology, whether it be ICT, design, engineering, medical, etc. We're just applying that immense expertise that you have in those particular areas into sport. Now you're doing it in cars and mobiles and electronics and so forth, but why not sport? And particularly around things that'll be attractive to them, like highly scalable tech, like fan engagement and all that sort of. Some of the high performance tech they're not going to be interested in because they can't scale it, because it's at the top of the it's the top of the pyramid. It's small, but if they can find technologies that can access the wider consumer markets, why not? Why wouldn't the big companies come to the table?
Yes, we'll go fast. We are in the development stage, but we'll achieve fast.
You look at the Netherlands, and Philips, over 100 years, was the company out of the Netherlands that has now been the legacy for development of all sorts of new innovations and technologies, and sport's one of them. The Netherlands has got one of the most thriving sports technology industries in the world, and you're talking 17 million people market. So again, you look at Korea, exactly the same situation.
제가 좀 다른 각도에서 보면 우리나라 최고의 기업이 가지고 있는 프로스포츠단들도 그 최고의 기업이 가지고 있는 정보 시스템을 사용하지 않고 해외에 있는 걸 갖다 쓰는 경우가 많거든요. 이제 왜 그런가를 가만히 생각해 보면 아까 김유경 교수님이 발표해 주실 때 한국에 과연 스포츠 밸류를 어떻게 봐야 되느냐라고 하는데, 스포츠가 가지고 있는 밸류라는 게 이제 스포츠 밸류도 있지만 소셜 밸류가 있고 그다음에 이코노믹 밸류가 있거든요. 그러니까 너무 이제 경제적인 관점에서만 이야기를 하다 보니까 이게 시장도 작아 보이고 가서 경쟁해봐야 얻을 것도 없다고 생각하니까 이제 투자가 계속 좀 안 되는 그런 악순환 속에 좀 들어가 있는 거예요. 그래서 어떻게 좀 고민할 때 이런 스포츠가 줄 수 있는 가치가 정말 무엇인가. 그리고 스포츠를 통해서 사회가 조금 더 밝아지거나 아니면 뭐 올림픽이나 월드컵 때 전 국민이 굉장히 흥분하는 모습들을 이 기업이 어떻게 사회적인 책임을 가지고 갈 것이냐라는 것들이 좀 합의가 이루어지는 그래서 아주 단기적인 경영만 보는 게 아니라 좀 멀리 볼 줄 아는 이런 방향으로 가는 게 하나 그래야 이제 기업들이 좀 투자가 가능하다고 보는 거고요. 또 하나는 뭐냐면 아까 이제 스타트업을 키우는 거 엑셀러레이터 얘기를 했던 이유는 LA 다저스가 엑셀러레이터를 하는 이유는 뭐냐면 그러니까 그게 강점은 뭐냐면 이 스타트업이 자기가 기술을 개발하고 서비스를 개발하는 단계에서부터 가장 그 서비스와 기술을 소비할 수 있는 소비자와 가까이 있다는 것이고요. 그리고 이제 선수들을 위한 이런 기술 개발 같은 걸 할 때 보면은 자기가 개발한 기술들을 선수들한테 바로바로 사용해 보면서 선수들의 피드백을 받을 수 있는 체계를 가지고 있다는 거예요. 그러니까 우리가 이제 스타트업들이 대부분 기술 개발하고 상품을 개발한다고 했을 때 언제 평가를 받냐면은 기술 개발이 다 끝나고 상품화가 된 다음에 고객으로부터 피드백이 들어오기 시작하거든요. 그럼 이제 그때 가서 이런 거 문제 있고 이런 거 문제 있고 하면 처음부터 다시 또 만들어가야 되는 이건데 그 프로세스를 최소화할 수 있는 방안을 어떻게 할 수 있느냐, 또 그런 체계를 꼭 한국에 있는 기업들만 가지고 할 것이냐 아니면 글로벌 네트워크를 가지고서 갈 것이냐. 그러니까 아까 born global or die in local이라는 얘기를 하셨지 않습니까? 그래서 우리도 생각할 때부터 그런 구조로 좀 가야 되는 게 필요하다 보고요. 그래서 이제 맨 처음에 말씀드렸던 폐쇄적이고 또 우리끼리만 해야 되고 우리의 역량이 중요하고 이런 게 아니라 좀 같이 협업하는 구조가 되게 필요하다고 좀 보여집니다.
Yeah, that's a really good points that you raised there. Again, if Korea was looking to develop a sports technologies network, I think one of the challenges that we've experienced is that often the stakeholders that we bring to the table, there's a social benefit angle, there's a high performance angle, and there's an economic benefit angle. We've continually tried to drive the economic value angle because it was the gap in the market that we thought we're servicing. Obviously, when we bring the Australian Sports Commission to the table, which is the peak body in the sector, they want to drive participation and social value. The Australian Institute of Sport wants to bring high performance, and we want to bring economic benefit. So you have a clash of drivers from those three bodies, which often does create some problem. However, if the stakeholder understands what benefit they're getting from the network, then it becomes a lot clearer. For example, the Australian Institute of Sport becomes a great validation point for startups with high performance technologies. Now, the Australian Institute of Sport will get that competitive advantage in using that technology because we know as entrepreneurs, for example, that realistically the commercial benefit of that technology won't happen for another 3 or 4 years when the next bit of technologies come through. So, for example, Catapult Sport was a great example of that, where the Australian Institute of Sport actually used that athlete tracking technology across a multitude of sports before the 2004 Athens Games. Catapult Sport actually didn't become a commercial company and start to create commercial benefit until 2007. And they only had their first paying customer in 2007. So what I'm trying to get at is that the AIS comes to the table, they get the winning edge because they've used this new technology for the Athens Games and they've got to understand how the athletes move and attract. But then 3 years later, the commercial economic benefit starts to occur, and now Catapult Sport's a $400 million company. So, yeah, there's a real tug of war between social high performance and economic value that an organisation like the ASTN is trying to bring.
Okay, if I add more, Mr. Kim mentioned about the sport itself has creating effects on social, cultural, and economical status of our life. Right, that's true. But when we talk about the commercialization and marketing aspect, it delivers lenders some kind of negative images. But for the sports organizations in Korea, they are relatively smaller, not making great deal amount of money. They're just asking for waiting for the governmental funds to maintain their life. So To me, sustainability in terms of operating and managing sporting event must be one of the key issue. And also, any organization working in this, any organization or business, profit-oriented businesses, also think about sustainability issue, how to attract those consumers or participants for their events and let them use by themselves instead of we request or make them persuade them to use it. So in that way, their businesses organization will be more successful.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think we see that Australia has a sophisticated sports market, and it's a relatively small market, and then therefore it's a really strong market to validate new sports innovations. That's the number one point, and that's where we're seeing the emergence of some really high quality but small sports technology companies. They validate in Australia, they get their minimum viable product, they might raise their first round of capital, but their real challenge, and this is a product of Australia being a million miles from anywhere else, you know, we're 8 hours from Hong Kong, we're 8 hours from Singapore, we're a long way away from anywhere in the world, and we're a small market. The challenges that our companies face is connecting to global markets and scale and understanding how do they scale up their businesses. And that's why we have trade missions to new countries like the US and India and etc. And that's why we try to help them connect the dots into those markets. So I hope that answered your question to some degree.
짧게 얘기하면 저는 우리나라의 그러니까 연맹이라고 부르는 곳의 가장 큰 문제는 미디어 전략이 없다고 봅니다. 그러니까 스포츠가 이코노믹 밸류가 폭발했던 이유는 미디어 때문에 사실 폭발한 건데 오늘도 이렇게 이야기를 들어보면 다 새로운 미디어에 대해서 가능성을 이야기하지 않았습니까? 근데 이제 기존의 미디어에서 그 중계권을 판매하는 수준에서의 비즈니스 모델에 머물러 있기 때문에 더 이상 뭔가 새로움을 못 만드는데 정말 새로운 미디어를 어떻게 활용해서 거기서 또 새로운 가치를 창출할 것인지 또 이제 또 새로운 미디어에서 적용되는 수많은 새로운 기술들이 또 어떻게 이 비즈니스 모델로 녹아 들어와서 가치를 창출할 것인지 이런 고민이 굉장히 중요하다고 보고요. 특히 이제 제가 이제 좀 가끔가다 기회 있을 때마다 하는 얘기가 뭐냐면 소셜 미디어 마케팅이라는 얘기를 하는데 이 세 단어 중에 제일 중요한 게 소셜이거든요. 그러니까 미디어 마케팅은 예전부터 했는데 지금도 미디어 마케팅을 그냥 하고 있는 거죠. 그러니까 SNS에서 옛날 미디어 마케팅이랑 똑같은 패턴으로 일을 하니까 이게 별로 그렇게 효과가 없는 거예요. 근데 어떻게 하면 소셜하는 것을 줄 수 있을까라는 거를 고민하고 그런 부분들이 새로운 비즈니스가 됐을 때 아까 이제 지속 가능성 말씀하셨는데 지속 가능성 측면에 좀 새로운 기회가 있을 거라고 보고요. 또 이제 오늘 아까 그 케빈 찬께서도 말씀하실 때 VR나 AR 같은 것이 새로운 광고 모델도 나오는 것처럼 그런 부분들을 좀 적용하는 도전 또 그걸 가능하게 하는 기업들 뭐 이런 부분들이 좀 만들어졌을 때 좀 가능해질 거라고 봅니다.
Are we running out of the time?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we open up the questions to the audiences? One or two? 저 질문 있으시면 질문 이제 부탁드리겠습니다. 네.
안녕하세요. 저는 인터넷 언론사 스포티안 학생 기자 김대욱이라고 합니다. 저 이제 많은 스포츠 과학 기술들을 말씀해 주셨는데 저는 좀 스포츠 전력 분석에 대한 기술에 대해 좀 묻고 싶은 게 있는데 이제 한국 농구 국가대표팀이 이제 처음으로 이제 선수 출신이 아닌 비선수 출신이 전력 분석원이 되었는데 저는 이게 이제 우리나라가 너무 스포츠 쪽에서 너무 선수 출신들만 너무 선호하는 그런 경향이 있다고 보는데 그게 과연 좀 옳은 건지 옳지 않은 건지 그것이 좀 궁금해서 질문 드렸습니다.
제가 먼저 할게요. 생각하실 동안. 그러니까 이게 참 저는 질문을 좀 바꿔야 된다고 생각하는 게 꼭 흑백 논리가 되게 많아요. 그러니까 뭐 선수냐 아니냐 이건데 데이터 사이언티스트라고 이야기를 할 때 이 세 가지가 필요하다고 얘기하거든요. 그러니까 스포츠 데이터 사이언티스트라고 하면은 스포츠 그 종목에 대한 이해가 있어야 되죠. 통계에 대한 이해가 있어야 되고 IT에 대한 능력이 있는 사람, 이 사람을 이제 스포츠 데이터 사이언티스트라고 얘기하거든요. 근데 세 개의 영역에 다 완벽한 전문성을 갖춘 사람을 사실상 찾기 되게 어렵습니다. 그런 사람은 뭐 어마어마한 연봉을 받으실 거예요. 그렇다면 이 세 개의 영역에 있는 사람들이 협업을 잘하는 게 중요하거든요. 근데 이제 이걸 꼭 이렇게 선수 출신이다, 비선수 출신이다 이렇게 볼 게 아니라 어떻게 하면 각각의 전문 영역을 가지신 분들이 같이 협력할 수 있는 구조를 만들 것인가라고 하는 거를 문화적으로 만들어내고 그 사람들이 일할 수 있는 구조를 만들어내는 게 저는 방향성이라고 이렇게 생각합니다.
감사합니다. I think we are running out of time, so we have one more question. Yes.
저는 스포츠산업협회 정철수입니다. 귀한 정보 주셔서 감사하고요. 저는 좀 다른 질문을 하나 드리도록 하겠습니다. 그 스포츠 산업이 굉장히 가속화되면서 가장 중요한 그 인간이 필요로 하는 자연 환경에 대한 훼손이 불가피한 현실입니다. 그런 차원에서 스포츠 산업과 자연 환경이 같이 보호되고 공존될 수 있는 방법이 있는지, 또 호주에서는 그런 정부나 민간 차원에서 어떤 기구가 있는지 그걸 묻고 싶습니다.
What he was asking was Australians are more concerned with environmental protection in whatever the sports-related events you operate.
I can't. I don't think I have enough knowledge to be able to answer that question. In regards to building facilities and things like that, look, I don't know enough about that part of the sector to be able to comment on the environmental ecology impacts, other than investments in sports infrastructure are made very, very considered, both from a commercial perspective and a financial sustainability perspective, but also an environmental perspective. And our country, does have high standards in regards to environmental and ecological impact on development of anything, whether that be residential developments or sports developments or whatever. So, we have I would see high standards in those areas.
If I add up just one last comment, the reason why the London Olympic was understood as a successful event because they followed a new international standard which is called ISO 21121, which was a sustainability issue. So any Olympic sponsors or sports-related organization, whenever they organize a sporting event, they need to follow that sustainability issue. So also the Olympic protocol, and there is the importance they encompass on the importance of the sustainability, ecological issue.
I think I must say, and we've had this conversation before, that the legacy component around development of sports infrastructure is held in very high regard in Australia, and I think if you look anywhere in the world in regards to development of infrastructure, whether it be for Olympic Games or Commonwealth Games or any other major sporting event that we hold, those infrastructures that have been used very, very well in the future by either new events that use them, multi-sport, multi-purpose events, and or the community benefiting from the infrastructure, and it continues to be used. You look at the Melbourne Cricket Ground 1956 Olympic Games, it's there and it's one of the great sporting stadiums in the world, and there's still a whole lot of sporting infrastructure around that. So I think Sydney was a great example of continued quality legacy of sports infrastructure. I think Rio, if you have a look at Rio, it's a disaster. again, I think London looked at Australia, the Sydney Games, in regards to the legacy outcomes. And again, just very quickly, you talk about innovation in sport, you look at innovation in sports stadium architecture and infrastructure. And we've got two companies that we deal with through our network. One's called Populous, another one's called Cox Architecture. And you look at the incredible stadium that can be built temporarily and pulled down if required, or can be converted for different multi-sports. The architects are becoming very smart and assisting in that legacy outcome, whether it needs to be completely dismantled or whether it can be used for multi-purpose, in the years beyond. So, yeah.
Yes, that part we need to learn as since we are hosting a mega sporting event. And if we don't have any more questions, let's end this second session. And I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to the panel members and our guest speaker. Let's give them a big applause.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very much enjoyed.
Thank you very much. It was quite promising discussion to find the ways for us to catch up the global sports markets. So as a given task of domestic market leaders. So I hope even after this discussion, any thoughts or suggestions will be welcomed and hope to be proposed to make a significant relationship between Australia and South Korea. Okay, then 3 speeches have been presented so far, and we will now take a coffee break for 20 minutes. And coffee will be served in the lobby. There will be, we will resume our last session after 20 minutes later. Thank you.